The following is a presentation for Garfield families, created and presented by the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade teams at Garfield School. This parent workshop was recorded on Tuesday, January 13th, 2021.
So since all of you have been such supportive families, and we know that you are often probably in the same room as your child, and you may overhear us teaching your children during their phonics time, you may have wondered a few things. Have you ever wondered why at Garfield students pound out and tap words, right? You may hear us say, okay, pound the word, tap it out, or they tap their arms for red words, or we have them trace red crayon bumps that they've created by using a screen and a crayon. These are questions you may have had, so we want to help answer some of those questions for you today.
If a question comes up, just know that at the end of our workshop, we will leave time for you to ask any question you may have, or maybe a question that wasn't answered through this workshop. You can also type in your question in the chat box, and we will make sure to answer that for you the best we can. So phonics instruction at Garfield. So we are very fortunate at Garfield because our entire kinder, first, second, and third grade team has been trained by the Institute for Multisensory Education in the Orton Gillingham approach, the Orton Gillingham method. We are actually the only school in the Alhambra School District to have received training and also implement the Orton Gillingham approach. We strongly believe that an explicit, systematic, and multisensory approach is the key to success when we're teaching our young readers and writers. So explicit meaning clear, systematic meaning in a specific order, and multisensory meaning that we're asking our students to use their senses as they learn.
So here's the main question that you may be wondering. What is this Orton Gillingham approach? It has an interesting story. So this approach is quite old given the history of phonics, and it was developed in the 1930s by a neurologist named Dr. Samuel T. Orton and an educator named Anna Gillingham. And they developed this at the New York Neurological Institute. And so Orton Gillingham, you'll hear us refer to this as OG. So Orton Gillingham is the long way that we term our phonics approach. That's why we often call it OG. It was Orton Gillingham, these two people developed an approach to teach individuals with dyslexia how to read. So their goal was really to support children who were struggling to read and grow as readers. However, thankfully, research has shown that this method is helpful for anyone learning to read. Orton Gillingham is a really highly structured approach that breaks down reading and spelling down into smaller skills involving letters and sounds, and then building on these skills over time. So you may have even heard over our Zoom calls in our classes where we're explicitly naming the letters, we're explicitly and directly naming the sounds that each letter makes. We're also constantly practicing rapid drills where we are blending words together. This is all a part of that structured approach that helps build skills over time. This method relies on directly teaching the fundamental structure of language by using multisensory teaching strategies. So this means that educators use sight, hearing, touch, and movement to help students connect and learn the concepts that are being taught. And that is, I think, really the most important thing about this approach is that it's multisensory and we're reaching out to try and help the students in many different ways. It's not just one way that we teach a concept. We are trying to expose them to many concepts in different ways that they can really feel it and understand that concept.
Mrs. Lawrence, you're muted.
Gosh, thank you. So there is a progression in the way that children learn phonics. You have to remember that in the English language, there's 26 letters. Those 26 letters make 44 sounds. English is so complex. Those 44 sounds, stay with me, are spelled 250 different ways, okay? So I want you to remember that, you know, when you're working at home with your child as they're learning how to read and as they're learning how to spell words. In kindergarten, we start with the foundation. So we start with the letters A through Z. Something very important in kindergarten is we don't go in ABC order. Why, Mrs. Lorenz? Why not? Because going back, right, going back to the Orton Gillingham method, we want it to be systematic. There's a way why your child starts with the letter C, the vowel O. There's a reason for that. And it's because I think kindergarten, Lividary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right after the first 9 letters that you introduce in kindergarten, that is when we can actually start teaching children how to spell and how to write short words. We start also exposing them to sight words. So using the sight words and using those first 9 letters, we start to empower them on how to write sentences. In kindergarten, another big thing is letter formation. Teaching children how to form each letter. We expose them to the short vowel sounds. The big thing in kindergarten is that they're learning how to read and spell 3-letter words. So consonant, vowel, consonant. And then towards the end, they start reading words that begin with the consonant digraph and then have a short vowel and end with the consonant. And then you move into first grade. First grade, they start the year off by going back to those kindergarten standards, kindergarten skills, and making sure that they've mastered them, okay? Because one of the big things about Orton Gillingham is making sure that we master the skills through a lot of repetition before we continue with introducing a new concept. We have consonant blends. That means when we have 2 consonants that work together to make a sound. We teach them open and closed syllables. They're starting to read multisyllabic words. So, 2-syllable words. And then they start learning about the long vowel sounds. You probably heard of the magical E, right? The magical E. And then in second grade, we start moving into very more complex. So in kindergarten, we begin with the most common ways, very simple, and we gradually start working into more complex skills. And by complex, I mean, less unusual ways that children, or I should say, unusual ways of writing a sound that we hear. So we want to make sure we master the long vowel sounds that were introduced in first grade. We introduce children to the Bossy R in second grade, vowel teams, diphthongs, and in parentheses, we put examples of those. The consonant LE pattern. A lot of heavy work is done in second grade with syllable types and syllable division patterns, which empowers children how to figure out a word instead of using the guessing, the guessing method.
Mm-hmm. So because there is a lot that we're teaching these children through their kinder, first and second grade years, our third grade team has also been trained, but this is their first year rolling out OG and implementing it. So we're largely speaking on behalf of K1 and 2. We do have goals. The main thing that we really want, I know each teacher wants this for your children, is we want students to have phonics skills that actually help them be better readers and writers. This is really important because sometimes when children are learning to read and write, it is kind of like a guessing game. They're looking at words, they're trying to read through words. You hear that strategy sounded out, which is a great strategy to use, but sometimes that's not always a helpful strategy when the child maybe doesn't know the certain sounds and letters that are in that word, right? So we want to teach them skills that really help support them in their reading and writing. So even if your child's a really good reader, they probably still need to work on spelling skills so that in their writing, they're correctly writing out their words. Another goal we have for our OG approach at Garfield is that we do want to host family workshops to better support our own OG instruction and learning, but also your time at home, because we know that you are being so supportive of us during this distance learning time. And our large goal as well for this is that all K through second, there's an edit, spelling error, grade teachers will implement Orton Gillingham phonics instruction daily. So what's wonderful about being a K through 2 team, and now that our third grade team is joining us as well in implementing OG, what we're able to do is provide really consistent instruction across the grade levels. So it's not just, oh, my teacher's in my child's in this teacher's class and she teaches this way or he teaches this way, but we're all approaching it from the same method and the same approach, so that throughout the grade levels, it's really building. And it's honestly, for me as an educator, this is really exciting, because I know that even previous students that I've had, as they go up into second grade, they get to keep learning and keep progressing in those phonics, reading skills and writing skills. And that's really important if we want our students to have a really strong foundation. So these are our main goals for Orton Gillingham at Garfield. And we've been doing this for a few years now, and we love it. We've seen so much growth from our students because of using this approach. And so we're just excited to share more with you about this and also continue in this with you all.
Mrs. Lorenz, you're muted again.
Sorry. If I could get paid for the amount of times kids tell me, Mrs. Lorenz, you're on. Okay, how can you help? So we strongly encourage you to make sure that your child is actively participating on Zoom. If we go back to the beginning of the presentation, a key component of this method is the multisensory. So the physical, the movements, the tapping of the arms, the tracing of the bumps, the tracing of the screen. There's a reason to to that method. It's kind of like learning a phone number. I remember when I learned my phone number, my mom had me see it, right? My mom had me say it out loud. And I remember we used to have, the type of phone where you push the actual buttons. So we want to make sure that the kids are using all their senses when they're on Zoom. If you would please make sure that the Orton Gillingham materials we have provided are organized. You don't know how much that helps when the kids show up with their materials and are able to grab their pounding hand, are able to grab their red crayon and their screen. It just makes things more efficient and more effective. Red words. So I'm sure kinder, first and second grade parents, you've seen those red word booklets. One way that you can help is practice reading and writing them. Quick tip about, or just red words. Red words are sight words. We can't sound them out ever. So we need to help kids memorize them. And then reinforce those strategies during, daily reading, especially if first grade and second grade, I know you guys are big on syllable division and using those skills to figure out, read a word.
Miss Lorenz, can I make a comment about the red words really quick?
Absolutely. Kindergarten teacher, Miss Lividary, go ahead.
Just as a point of kindergarten versus other grades, just to let parents know, Miss Lorenz made a great point about how red words cannot be stretched out or sounded out, but because kindergartners haven't gone over a lot of the sound sounds, you might notice that we learn some words as red words, and then they can be taken off of red words once they know the
Mhm.
sound. So just be aware of that, parents, because you might think like, well, this one can be sounded out if they're in kindergarten. And that might just be because we haven't introduced that sound yet. So to kindergartners, they can't stretch it out because they don't know the sound.
Right. Yeah. Good point, Miss Livideri.
So we know that your time is valuable, and we know that as you are giving your time to listen to this and be involved, we did want to say thank you for coming. We have some resources for you. There are digital materials that will be sent out via email after the presentation. So if you RSVP'd and requested digital materials, then you will receive an email later after this presentation with those digital card packs. So we have the letters for you that you can work with your child on at home, and you can tab through the slides. It's like basically a digital slideshow that has the letters on there. You can practice those at home with your child. If you RSVP'd and requested the physical materials, those will be available for pickup at the front office. If you requested them starting Thursday, tomorrow, on January 14th, the office is open from 7:30 to 4. So that would be your time frame to go in and pick those up. If you are here, thank you for being here, but maybe you didn't RSVP and you want some of these materials, we can send you digital materials. I don't know how many extra physical packs we have. So if you're here and maybe didn't request any materials, we can just send you that digital card pack. And also for the materials, if you want to use the letter cards at home to practice the sounds and blending, please only use the appropriate cards. So here's where it gets a little bit tricky.
Mhm.
For example, kindergarten is currently using cards numbers 1 through 19. So all of these cards are numbered. And again, we don't follow the alphabetical order. We're teaching these letters and sounds in a different sequence. So kindergarten has currently covered numbers 1 through 19, which means cards C through N, the letters C through N. Again, it's a different sequence than your ABC sequence. So first grade, we're currently using cards 1 through 35. So we start at letter C and we go to double Z. And then second is currently using cards 1 through 121, and they start with C all the way to the double O. And if that feels confusing for you, please ask your child's teacher for clarification on this if you're going to practice at home. For example, our first graders, if we tried to drill them on the cards that second grade is using, they would not know all of the sounds and blends that the second graders know at this point, because we have not covered all of the vowel-teens. There's all of these L blends, R blends. There's so many different types of sounds that we teach with these letter cards. And so please don't try to drill. This is the one ask. Please don't try to drill your child on all of the cards, because they haven't been taught all of those sounds. So we want to make sure that whatever you practice at home is consistent with whatever we have currently covered. And you don't need to try to push your child and show them more cards. It's okay. We'll get there eventually. So if you're confused about that, I know it sounds kind of strange and weird to say only do these cards. Just ask your child's teacher and they will definitely be happy to tell you which cards they have covered up to this point.
Once you receive your cards and you start looking at your cards, just know that on our school website, we have 2 videos that are probably going to be super helpful. The OG letter sounds video will explicitly teach you how to pronounce each sound. One of the big things that we find when we receive children at Garfield is that a lot of the children tend to add the sound at the end of a consonant sound. So what I mean by this is when you see the letter K, a lot of times kids will say K. And it's not K because there's no U after the K. It's K. So make sure before you actually start using those cards that you have a clear understanding of how we pronounce and how we explicitly teach the sound with this method. And we also have a Orton Gillingham vowels video. So I'm sure you've seen in your child's Orton Gillingham materials. Kinder, I think you use tense. First grade, do you use, I'm sorry, Kinder, you use the little sticks. First grade, do you use the little sticks?
Mm-hmm. We use the tense. We use
Yeah,
tense.
so you either sticks or tense, but that video will teach you how to use those little sticks and tense, and it'll also expose you to how we use them. You'll be able to find those 2 videos on our website under academics, under Orton Gillingham Phonics. And our hope is that we will continue to provide you with videos to assist you in understanding the OG method, and also, being able to support your child at home with the OG method. So questions, please feel free to raise your hand, type it in the chat box. If there's a question that's, lingering in your mind, we will try our best to address it.
If you don't want to unmute yourself, you can just type it in the chat box if that feels more comfortable to you. But this is definitely a time where we want to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I just got a question. I guess is there a huge difference between this and then the traditional kind of teaching method that, that I guess most parents are used to when we were in, I guess at the same age as our child when we were in school?
Great question. Yeah. A lot of times, and I'm aging myself here, but I remember, in kindergarten, we would sing the ABC songs, and we would learn the letters from A to Z. We didn't use the multisensory approach. So, we didn't use our senses to learn the letter and sound relationships. The other thing is, a lot of times it doesn't go in a systematic order. And what research has discovered is that, children will be more successful if we go in a systematic, logical order. That's I feel like that's experience. I don't know if any other teachers want to chime in on
that. And I would add to that, there's different approaches to teaching reading and phonics, right? So for us, we're teaching an explicit method where we are directly teaching the letters, the sounds that are related to each concept that will be taught. But there are different approaches. So for example, I've observed kindergarten classes where the approach is mainly on sight words and also word families. And that's a different approach. So let's say a word family is at, like words like bat, cat, mat, right? So kind of trying to get the kids to think about the words and recognize those word families rather than so that would be one approach. Or other approaches also include more of a whole language approach, or basically just trying to let the children be exposed to literature, which is wonderful, but you can expose a child to as many books as you want, and not every child picks up reading easily. For most kids, reading is difficult and it's hard because it's so complicated. It's not necessarily easy just to pick up by exposure. There are children who will pick up reading just by being exposed to books and literature. And it will seem like, wow, reading's so easy for them. But for most of us learners, reading is actually very difficult. It's very hard to learn. And so that's why this approach is very targeted, is very specific, and it builds over the ages.
Yeah.
Something I would love to add to that, Ms. Lorenz and Ms. Davidson too, is when the teachers got trained in this, what was surprising to me was that there are actually a lot of things that make sense in our English language spelling and reading system that we're not aware of. We like to say, oh, we have the craziest rules in English language. And really, there's a smaller percentage of those crazy rules than we think. And so through this program, we were really taught like students will know when to use each letter combination because there is a rule that makes sense with it. And so I'm not sure which way we were probably all taught to read in different ways. And for some students, it's very easy to pick up reading. About 20% of the population, they pick up reading like that. And then for the rest of the population, they really need explicit teaching. And so your student might be one that just easily picks up reading, and that's great. But for those students who do struggle and really don't understand what the letters and sounds that combined are doing, Orton Gillingham does teach when to use those rules and why. And so it kind of teaches their brain like, oh, well, this is a sound I hear at the end of this. So that means it's going to be a double letter rather than a single letter or whatever it is. And so the rules actually will make a lot more sense to them through the system.
I see a question in the chat box that says, does OG program, does it go all the way up to the upper grades? So that's a good question. We're currently using OG, this specific method, in our kinder, first, second, and third grade classes. There are more advanced phonics trainings for educators so that they can use them in their classrooms. Our upper grade teachers aren't currently trained in that yet. I don't know. I'm not an administrator. I can't answer if they will get trained or not, but we do have one of our resource teachers, Mary Helen Ramirez. Mrs. Ramirez is trained in that higher level phonics. And what that means is, like, when, let's say, for example, you have a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th grader. At that point, they should know their sounds and letters, right? They don't need to be taught their sounds and letters, but there's still so much more that they can be taught with spelling and learning morphology of words, the history of words, the Latin roots. There's so much that can be taught, so then in those upper grades, you're getting more to like prefixes, suffixes. And so right now we're not at that point because this is our second year of having rolled out the OG. We learned a lot last year. This year, we're continuing to grow and develop and implement it across the grade levels. So we're not quite there yet. And I don't know if the long-term plan is to, let's say, have 8th grade teachers trained in this just because of logistics. But thankfully, if we're starting this at the younger ages for our younger students, they're going to have such a better foundation as they move up that then it'll be easier for those upper grade teachers to address some of those more complicated spelling patterns or rules or information about the words that they're learning. And there's another question, how long will this program be used? That's a great question. I don't think we've ever set a time limit on it. We know we'll be using this for a long time. And would you agree with that, Mrs. Lorenz?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I could speak to that and just say from a personal side, I will not teach phonics another way. Like I won't go back to the way I used to teach phonics. I will stick with this method because I see how helpful it is for students to really be taught all of this really valuable information, and it really helps them become better readers and writers.
Yeah, and I think Ms. Davidson, I could speak for our K-1-2 team, that as a team, we made an agreement that, we stick to this method at Garfield. Welcome. You're welcome, everybody.
I see another question that says, asking essentially, are the cards used for the digital OG pack? Are these cards used during class time phonics? Yes, these would be the same type of cards that we're using in class. I use both digital cards in class and I use the physical cards, but whether it looks like this on the actual card I'm holding or I'm showing it on the screen, it's the same sound. So teachers may be going back and forth between the actual physical card or the digital card just for the ease of presentation, but they are the same sounds. So whatever the cards are numbered, they're consistent with the cards that we're using. And another question is this learning style used because of our children growing up in a digital era? I don't think that we're using this because of that. I think it's still helpful for us to have a physical learning styles, even though we're having to teach over the screen. And believe me, we understand that there is still a component of this that's lost over Zoom. So unfortunately, it's not the same as if we were in class, to be honest, right? Because if we were in class, I can be right next to a student. I can be helping them. I can be immediately giving them feedback on their letter formation. It is so different on Zoom. However, I think having that physical and just multisensory approach is still, it's very valuable even in this context, because it helps us to not just be looking passively at the screen, right? Otherwise our kids are just looking at the screen. So we do want them interacting with that, and hopefully that is helping in the digital world, but we understand it's also difficult to carry this out.
We still have one more question. And the question is, do you guys also use picture cards or just the letters?
Our method only sticks to letters. There are no pictures on the cards. Yeah. One thing I do want to mention, I don't know, Ms. Davidson, if you want to hold up a white card and a yellow card. And there's a reason why some are white and some are yellow. So the white cards are going to be all the consonant sounds. And then we have the yellow cards that are going to be all the vowel sounds. So if you're wondering why some are white and some are yellow.
Are there any other questions right now? Looks like everyone hopefully is good. Of course, I would just speak for our K-3 team. If you have questions, please reach out to us. If there is something, or maybe there's something you're concerned about, and you're saying, you know, I notice my child isn't doing this, or this is happening, I'm noticing this, let us know so that we can talk with you about whatever you're noticing at home, and we can work together to help make this even more beneficial for your child. We would love your feedback though. So there is going to be a feedback link in the chat box. If you could click on that link and go ahead and just fill out that feedback form before you say goodbye fully, or, you know, pull it up on another tab. That way you can work on that and fill it out so that we can take some of the feedback you give us. We can think about it as a team, and we can, you know, address whatever needs you're hearing, whatever feedback you have for us. That will help us a lot. We would love that. Oh, there's a couple things going in. Yep, if you check the chat box, the form is there for feedback. All right, well, thank you everyone so much for coming to our parent workshop. This is our first OG parent workshop, so we'll see if we do another one. We'd like to do another one, and we will keep you posted on that as well. We'll also keep you posted if we create more videos so that you can use those from the website.
Thank you.
With that, you all are free to go. Thank you so much. Please fill out that feedback form though. We would really appreciate it.
Thank you.